last week, you remember I talked to David Seymour about Pharmac and this mythical fourth article that the primary drug dispenser of this country, or at least drug funder of this country, had added to its Te Tiriti policy, and how its Te Tiriti policy was driving its decision-making. And that's not David Seymour saying that, that's not Michael Laws saying that, that is Pharmac saying that. And they had released a Te Tiriti, or have centred a Te Tiriti o Waitangi policy as part of the critical decision-making infrastructure at that particular organisation, including, as we discovered, a fourth article that doesn't exist, but Pharmac decided to invent and create anyhow. Just extraordinary. This week, David Seymour, in his role of being the Minister in charge of Pharmac, I think as Associate Health Minister, wrote a letter of expectations to Pharmac, and as you would expect, some in the mainstream media's immediate interest was not about what it will mean in terms of the procuring of drug and its distributions and the kind of drugs and drug policies that will hopefully save and enrich our lives, but that he seemed to be having some sort of criticism of the Te Tiriti policy, and for some strange reason that became the primary media input. Joining us though, and just off a plane, is the Acting Prime Minister and ACT Party Leader David Seymour. David, how are you? Good to catch up with you this morning.
Very well, thanks, Michael. Yeah, good. I've just been on Air New Zealand. Isn't it amazing? They tell you if the government owns it, then you'll get better service and it'll be cheaper. But now the government owns it, and that's not true. Yeah,
well, there you are. There's an argument about Kiwi Rail, isn't there?
Well, in the airport, I think we've taken a lot for granted that somehow having politicians as the shareholder will improve the outcome for the customer. I think there's now lots of evidence that that's not true, and we should have a more open mind about liberating some of these businesses back to the private sector. Anyway, I just had to get that in.
No. You know, once upon a time I would have disagreed with you, but I've come around to your viewpoint, I have to say, David. Listen, this week you released publicly, and good on you, a letter of expectations to Pharmac, as I said, our primary drug procurement and distribution agency, I suppose. Why did you do that, and what are the changes that you think needed to be made when you did write that letter?
Well, the simple reason for doing it is that I legally have to. Every Crown entity is basically a separate organisation with its own board, so it's kind of independent, but of course it's still a part of the government at arm's length, and the way that you communicate with them is this public letter of expectation. So there's quite a few of these floating around, but often they don't get much attention. I decided that Pharmac is a big opportunity for New Zealand, and we should start being a bit more open about what we're trying to achieve. So I actually went to Pharmac last week, and I did an open meeting with all of the staff at Pharmac and said, here's the letter that I'm planning to send you, and this is why I'm doing it, because I wanted them to be sort of in on the mission. And then this week I took a whole lot of other people to Pharmac, mainly patient groups and clinicians and people that manufacture and sell medical treatments, and they actually came to Pharmac, and I presented a letter again, this time publicly, including with the media there, and basically I want everyone to know what the government's goals for Pharmac is and what we're asking them to do, so that it puts the onus on them to actually do it and actually rise to the challenge. So what's in the letter? Basically, four things. One is I think the culture needs to change a bit, and I'm a big fan of Pharmac generally. I think there's very capable people there. You walk around the offices, as I have a few times now, and you meet all these people, and you say, well, where did you come from, and what's your qualifications? Very able people with qualifications in things like pharmacology and finance, very good at what they do. But also, over 30 years, they've kind of got into a bit of an us and them, where they have the tough job of telling people we can't afford everything, and that's hard, and it's made them a bit defensive. So my letter says that they need to start seeing the patients, the clinicians, the drug companies actually more as partners in a shared effort to try and make healthcare more efficient. That's the first thing. And I see it as a footnote to that. The previous Minister, Aisha Verrall, she wrote them a letter saying that they have to make the Treaty of Waitangi and embedding the treaty a core part of their exercise. And I just said, look, I got to tell you guys, I don't think that's an appropriate goal for an organisation that mainly specialises in buying medical treatments. We just want you to get our medicine for the best price as quickly as possible. It doesn't really matter what background we're from. And then I go on to say, look, I think we need to change the way Pharmac operates. And this is, I think, the most important bit. At the moment, they get a fixed budget and they do the best they can within that budget. I think oftentimes, if we actually spent more on medicines, we could, for example, fund heart medicine that saves hospitalisation, and we could actually save the taxpayer money by spending more on medicine sometimes. And I think we need more of that thinking, because otherwise healthcare costs are just going to get out of control. People are already pretty upset with the standards of service they're getting. So thanks for letting me say all that, but that's what the letter's about.
No, and fair enough too. So, first of all, you're talking about the culture of the organisation. We'll come to that in just a second. I'm interested in that last bit, though. If they've got a fixed budget, though, David, and you think, well, you need to spend more money on, for example, heart operations, does that mean within the budget that they've got, or that they could come to you and say, listen, we've got a really good deal?
Well, just to step back, I mean, until not very long ago, we had the DHBs, and each DHB would put a certain amount of money into the pot, and then the government would say, well, this is the pharmaceutical budget. They called it the combined pharmaceutical budget, and this is how much money you have. And then the instruction for Pharmac was, with this much money, so $900 billion in those days, now about $1.5 billion, see how much you can buy. And in fact, the law says that Pharmac must secure for eligible persons the best treatments they can within an available budget. What I'm saying is that we need to start asking the question, is it sometimes appropriate for Pharmac to say to the government, look, if you gave us another $1 million or another $100 million, we think we could fund some things that could save you hospital admissions. One example of that is Trikafta, which they funded for other reasons, but one of the impacts of Trikafta is that we've had almost no lung transplants in New Zealand in the last couple of years, because people with cystic fibrosis often need lung transplants. It's a brutal operation. I mean, they cut open your entire chest and change your lungs out. They often only last for 5 years, and it costs a fortune. Well, you know, we need to factor in that by funding, we may have paid for Trikafta several times over just by saving people lung transplants, and we need to start factoring in that kind of thinking.